Hello and welcome to IASPrimers. My name is Shubhashish and you're watching today's daily news analysis. Now, as part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing practice, and you can get your answers evaluated for free. So 2 answers every week. All you have to do is write your own answer in a conventional way, pen and paper. Share it with me on my Telegram or WhatsApp. The details are there in the description box below. Now today I have 3 questions. This is not really a question, it's just that I wanted you to have a note on NFC. I believe science-based questions can be asked. Now this question is particularly important from GS3 perspective. UPSC tends to ask question on the issues concerning the informal workers. It can ask you about casualization of the labor force, casualization of the formal workers, so like that. Then being water stressed is a cause of concern in a country. About half of our population is water stressed. So in that reference, even though the topic is groundwater, we'll connect that. But this is the theme that I'm covering from GS1 perspective, geography. Right, so GS1, GS3, GS3. Now let's get on with the news. So first article. Okay, so this is with reference to the developments in Pakistan. So we all know that Imran Khan, so he was the prime minister. So he was, he was voted out. There was a no confidence motion in the National Assembly of Pakistan, where his party members went to the opposition camp, and he was not able to prove his majority. So he lost the no confidence motion in the National Assembly. Now when we were singing the song Bewafa Bewafa Nikli Tu, right, so he lost, and so he thought, I can do one thing. His party was still having the speaker, right, the person who was responsible for the National Assembly. So he somehow managed to get this dismissed, the no trust vote or the no confidence motion. So if the no confidence motion is dismissed, so the prime minister is also not dismissed. Right. So on one ground he was able to do, he's the prime minister after all, or was the prime minister. So this he was able to do. And other thing is, being the prime minister, he has the powers to recommend to the president that, the elections should be held earlier, the house can be dissolved. So on that pretext also, if the house is dissolved, so this no confidence motion makes no sense. And in fact, with the prime minister losing the no confidence motion, that means the other camp, the opposition camp, had the majority and they could have formed the government. So that is how the democracy functions. But since the prime minister has, he has pressed a resolution, he has conveyed to the prime minister that the parliament be dissolved. So nobody can stake claim on the government, and therefore the prime minister remains in the office itself. Now fresh elections will be conducted. Let's see if it really happens, because this issue is being heard at the Supreme Court. So there is a suo moto hearing, that is Supreme Court by itself. Nobody went there. By itself, it saw the constitutional crisis over here, and by itself it is listening to this constitutional issue. Now, like in Pakistan, there is a problem, and the root cause of this problem was the mismanagement of the economy. Likewise, in Sri Lanka, I think we have covered this enough. There is an economic crisis. There is a debt crisis, and you can see the protests going on. So Sri Lanka, the Prime Minister, Rajapaksa regime, Rajapaksa administration, in fact this entire family is full of political leaders. So they are cabinet ministers. Imagine the Prime Minister is left alone and the rest of the ministers have tendered their resignation, that we don't want to be part of the government. You guys have mismanaged the economy. You are responsible for all the chaos over here, and therefore we are not part of this government. Clear? So ministers have given their resignation. So this is the scenario at this point of time. So all of this is going on. This agitation is going on. Social media sites, messaging apps have been blocked, and most likely we may have a caretaker government to tide over this situation. WHO pauses Covaxin supply via UN bodies. Okay, let's do this, then we'll look at the WHO thing. And there is one more thing over here, not for Covovax. So what is this Covovax? So these are things that are important for prelims. We know World Health Organization, right, responsible for health in the world. Okay. So when the co-vaccine had come, it's a vaccination that is made by an Indian company, indigenously made, Bharat Biotech. Technology also as ours only. Just that it kills the virus basically. They kill the virus and inject it in the human body. And since the virus is already there, even though it is dead, some sort of a immune response will come. So even when the vaccine had actually was being rolled out during the pandemic time, during this wave of the COVID-19, at that time also there were concerns expressed with reference to poor manufacturing practices. They were not able to convey in very clear terms. There were allegations being made, and they were not very clear as to the efficacy data and if the production facility is in a good hands or not. But since it was an extreme scenario at that time, so emergency use authorization was given. But now the WHO has paused this. It said that the emergency is not there anymore. There are concerns associated with your manufacturing practices. There are some deficiencies that have been noted. So we are pausing it, right? This cannot be supplied via the human bodies because there are certain concerns associated. So this is it. Now, what is WHO? Okay, fine. It is responsible for the health sector and it is based out of Geneva, right? So these are things that you should know. It is also a specialized agency of the United Nations. So these are things that you need to keep in mind for your prelims. Now everything fine. Now what is Covovax, by the way? So when the pandemic had taken place, first time, imagine, no vaccination, no medicine, nobody has a clue about what is happening at this point of time. So there was a need felt, okay, fine, what we can do is, this is a global problem and it needs to be addressed globally. So the idea, Covovax, is basically an idea that, okay, fine, for improved vaccine delivery, availability, accessibility and affordability, what we'll do is, there are certain countries which are rich, which have a lot of money. They tend to be, I should have written capital, money, R&D. They tend to have a lot of pharmaceutical companies also. They have the know-how also, technology also. Okay. Then there are certain but their production is very, very expensive. Their production is expensive. They have money, but the amount of beneficiaries that are going to be there are very few. Okay. Then there are countries like India, which has an expertise in manufacturing of vaccination, and not just manufacturing, high quality manufacturing at low cost, like the Serum Institute, which manufactures the Covishield. In fact, even the Bharat Biotech also. So we have this universal immunization program. How is the vaccine being coming, right? We have the compulsory licensing, we have the generic medicines. So low cost medicines we are able to supply. Now in this case, it is about the vaccination only, Covovax vaccination. Okay. So the idea was that each country and around the world, there are certain countries which have their specific core competency. In fact, think about it, we could manufacture the vaccine, but like Covishield, but we needed the technology from Oxford. AstraZeneca had made this, and then they gave the technology, and then we manufactured, and then we supplied this. So we have certain competency, but we do not have other, and likewise for the developed countries also. So this Covovax had been created, had been conceptualized, that each country will collaborate and share their core competencies. Fine. So they will be sharing different countries having different core competencies, and then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to have new vaccines, new developments, and that too at an affordable price. And it will not be limited to those countries. Obviously, those countries who are manufacturing it, who are supplying the technology, they will have the right of about I think it's 1/5 of the vaccines they can keep, and the rest has to be given to the entire world, because it was based on One Health approach. Now you must have seen that USA is getting fine after the vaccination, no waves over here, but Africa is having a wave. And then again, that wave is migrating to the developed countries. So it was based on the One Health approach that entire world has to be vaccinated or immunized. So they will be sharing their core competencies, right? So 1/5 it will be with their stock, and the rest has to be given to the entire world. So in that way, everybody will have access to these vaccines, and the vaccines will be available to everyone till the time the capacity is enhanced. So I didn't have it on the Hindu paper, but I got something about the Covovax from the Times of India. So Covovax is mentioned. It is co-led by Gavi, right? Gavi, and what is Gavi? The Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, so CEPI, and the World Health Organization. So it is basically the initiative of 3 agencies over here, not just Gavi is distinct from this. So it is an initiative of all of this, and the idea is to ensure global equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines after the outbreak of COVID pandemic. So the Serum Institute of India, it sounds more like an educational institute. Okay, SII will export Covishield to Bangladesh under Covovax. So this was in November 23. Right. So this is it. So this vaccine, it is not that it is some unique vaccine, Covovax. It's just that different vaccines will be distributed by the UN global body, I presume WHO. It will be given to them under this program. A lot of hue and cry in the place where I am, Punjab, Haryana region. Okay. So Punjab, new government is there, Aam Aadmi Party government, and they have said that they have been very assertive over the issue that the Chandigarh, which is basically a union territory, should be handed over to Punjab, as it was the Punjab villages which were taken over to create this capital, and it was shared jointly between Haryana and Punjab. Subsequently, there was to be a different capital altogether. So Punjab Legislative Assembly, in which Aam Aadmi Party is in the majority, they have said that, see, we want Chandigarh to be integrated back into Punjab over here. Naturally, Haryana can't be quiet on this issue. So Haryana calls for special session. There will be special session on this issue over here. And they will be deliberating not just on the issue of Chandigarh, but they will be also looking into the other federal issues or interstate issues. And one such interstate issue is Satluj-Yamuna link. Satluj-Yamuna link canal. So what is this Satluj-Yamuna link canal? It is basically simple. You can see it on the map. This. So river water that is coming from Satluj, and there is this Yamuna water. So this will be linked. Now naturally this territory is Haryana. So they will be getting access to the Satluj water coming into Yamuna over here. So they will be getting access to the water over here. So this was part of, when the partition had taken place. Initially it was just Punjab. Partition, I mean India-Pakistan partition. So when that partition had taken place, so 3 rivers, Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, the rights went to Pakistan, and the rest was supposed to be with Beas, Ravi and Satluj was to be with India exclusively. So, and when we say India, it meant Punjab over here. But when the new state was created, reorganization of Punjab, who creates it? Parliament. So when the new state was created, naturally the water has to be shared. So in consequence of this, there was a deal, and the Satluj-Yamuna link canal was to be established. So 122 kilometers of it, and you don't have to memorize this, just an idea. Now eventually, I think a couple of years back, the government had said that we are not okay with this. So land was acquired, but it wasn't yet operationalized. So the government, Punjab side, they decided to fill this canal altogether and hand it over back to the farmers. That is what the idea is. They say that, see, the groundwater depletion is taking place, water is less in a place, so we cannot afford to do this. So you see, this is an interstate river water issue, right? Interstate river water issue. This is not something that is specific to this place, even with reference to Karnataka, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, all of this we are listening time to time. Now comes the mains based question, fighting for rights of informal sector. The article doesn't impress me much. It is basically about a civil society organization label line and what good work they have done. It sounds more like a paid news to me, but yes, it does give us certain issues that the informal sector workers experience. Now, before moving ahead with reference to what are the rights, what are the concerns with the informal sector workers, we really need to know what is informal sector. And when we have to know informal sector, we need to know what is the distinction between formal and informal over here. Quite natural. So formal sector is normally the sectors which you want to be employed into if you are into private sector also. So and what happens in the formal sector? So you are employed, you have an agreement with the company that okay fine, you'll be given this salary, these will be your terms, your company would be registered, you will be provided certain provident fund, insurance, so some social security benefits, some written agreements are there. Your security of tenure, even your security of tenure, because if you have to be fired also, then in that case also there has to be a time limit, and likewise you also have a contractual obligation. But when we talk about the informal sector, the definition is when no social security benefits are being provided. Then, and if any one is provided, then it will be categorized as formal. So informal is basically, in very simple terms, it is those companies that are not registered, which do not provide social security benefits. Just look outside in the shops and many other places. So those are basically informal economy, informal sector. Clear? Okay. Now when we say formal and informal, there is another term that we need to keep in mind, that is organized sector and unorganized. Now you should be very clear about the difference between the two. Organized sector is any company, is any business occupation which has more than 10 employees. It has nothing to do with registration or providing social security benefits, just the 10 employees. Less than 10, it is unorganized. Now, typically you will find that those companies which are informal are also into the unorganized sector, but it is not necessarily the case. You may have WhatsApp, which used to have only 4 employees, so it was formal, but it was still unorganized in terms of its definition with reference to number of employees. Now that is of course in USA, but yes. Clear? So this is this. So informal, unorganized, you may find this interchangeably used, but these are two different terms over here. Now informal economy constitutes about, since it is not registered, we don't have a data as such, but yes, roughly it is believed it is about 50% of the economy, and about 90% of the labor force works in the informal sector or in the unorganized sector. The rest is in the organized sector, and it is the organized sector or the formal sector, since it is registered, right? It is registered, that means it has to abide by some government regulations. So the social security benefits, the welfare of the workers, etc. are applicable to the formal sector. For example, the Minimum Wages Act or the labor inspection will take place. What is the condition of the working group, the workers over here? All of this will be ensured over here. The working of the trade unions, all of these factors. Okay, right. So this is it basically. Now, the things that are denied with the informal sector, the rights of the informal sector now, is very simple. They do not have a formal contract, so they are not sure if they will get the wages. Here it says that the wages are delayed for three or more months, and you cannot claim it from anybody because there is no authority for that. There is no authority as such, so it becomes difficult. Then there is a law known as Minimum Wages Act, but Minimum Wages Act is only for those companies that are registered. Informal do not get it. So they are typically, these people are paid, even though they may be working very hard, their wages will be very, very meager if they are paid. Then the working conditions are very poor, and not just the working conditions, the safety of the employees is also a matter of concern. Then such companies do not provide social safety benefits, social security benefits. So such are not provided, like if your child falls ill or you have some medical emergency, You don't have an health insurance, the company is not providing you. What about pension, old age benefits, not providing you? What about you're fired, do you get compensation? No. So these are certain concerns. Then here it refers to the domestic workers who also say that they have been beaten up, so assaulted at work. So those are certain other concerns. Now let's look at the question. How is informalization of the economy detrimental to the economy? Okay. State measures being undertaken to secure the rights of the informal workers. Now, how is this detrimental to the economy? Naturally, the welfare of the labor, welfare of about 90% of the population is hampered like anything. Right? You have all the points over here. It is damaged. Furthermore, informal economy also means that the government will have to spend more on the welfare of these people, which should have been done by the company. So those benefits, like for you private people, it will not provide for the pension, but here the government will have to have a Atal Pension Yojana. It will have to have a Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, right? So government will have to spend more expenditure to the government. Furthermore, since these companies are not registered, they are not paying tax. So it is also affecting the tax to revenue, tax to GDP ratio. So your tax is coming less, even though the output is there, but the tax collection is very, very poor. In fact, there is no tax collection at all. So it is bad for the economy. Now, state measures being undertaken to secure the rights of the informal workers. It's very simple. There are two things. One is we have the informal economy, make it formal. So formalization of the informal sector, that has to be done. Other thing is the government needs to have some sort of a positive interference for the welfare of these people. This has to be enforced. Now we have certain things. I refer to the Ministry of Labour and Employment. This is the PIB. So the government is, one thing that the government is doing is for formalization of the economy is that the government, this is a bit beyond the PIB, introduced the GST, it introduced the demonetization, then it introduced the Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Protsahan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Protsahan Yojana. It is basically the companies feel that if they are registered, they have to spend more on the welfare of the employees. So they have to contribute to the EPF also, employee contribution of the Provident Fund. So under the Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Protsahan means incentive. So Protsahan Yojana, the EPF component, employee component, will be paid by the government itself. So it's a Protsahan to the company. Then the government also initiated something known as Unorganized Workers Social Security Act. And what does it do? It stipulates welfare schemes for unorganized workers on matters related to life and disability cover, health and maternity benefits, old age pension, social security schemes, etc. Right? So here are the list of schemes that the government is doing for them. Right? So these, I think this is adequate content for you. Now, one more thing I would like to say, I would like to add with reference to formal, informal, organized, unorganized. These days, we are witnessing a very interesting trend, that is casualization of the formal economy. So, like imagine Maruti. So, Maruti employs casual workforce, or Maruti cannot do the informal workers because of the regulations. But what Maruti can do is Maruti can employ somebody, some agency, or even the toll plaza people. So they can employ an agency which will be responsible for hiring people, and they may involve informal workers. So as far as the big company is concerned, their responsibility is over. It is the concern of the other company, for which the work has been outsourced. So we are finding that those companies are engaging in the informal is going on. Lift spending. So this is the article. The center must crank up capital spending if it wants to stoke economy. What does stoke the economy means? The pandemic has taken place. The economy is not doing very well. The index of industrial production is low. The inflation is very high. So to uplift the economy, to increase the jobs, everything, the government needs to step up capital spending. I have this, by the way. So this you can, I think you can read this. So let me just cover this part first. So there is a concept, think about it. If an economy has to grow, what does grow means? The GDP has to increase. And what is GDP? Imagine a manufacturing unit is producing the same amount of goods, or even if it is, when it is working at 100% capacity, it will produce 100 goods only if it can produce 100. So if it has to increase its capacity, the plant or the manufacturing unit will have to have additional investments, so that, let's say this was the manufacturing unit, so another manufacturing unit has to come. So it needs to increase the capacity. So that is when the production will increase, that is when the GDP will increase, that is when more people will be employed. So capital formation leads to sustainable growth in the GDP levels. So therefore it is very, very important. Therefore we need more and more investments coming into the economy. Now I'm giving you with reference to manufacturing, it could have been any other example. So this is a very good indicator, capital formation. So in our country, it ranges from 27 to 33% of the GDP. We need to increase this sustainably. In fact, because of the pandemic, it has come down. Now there are two ways of capital formation. One is the private sector spending money on capital, and other is the government. So the public sector being the engine of the growth. Now in this scenario, what we are witnessing right now, since the pandemic has taken place, imagine all the companies that are there, even your hotels, restaurants, etc. They have had a significant amount of loss. So significant amount of loss over here. So in that case, the government should step up spending. The government should increase the spending amount. Private cannot increase the capacity, so government can increase the spending. And what type of spending will the government do? The government can spend on creation of, let's say, a highway. It can spend on the highway means Bharatmala, the port, seaway. This thing is national ways are Sagarmala. Right. So when the government is spending more, let's consider these two examples. So let's say for highway, when the government spends more, then what will happen? More highways have to come up. Let's say even if there is no demand, the government is just spending money on creating a highway. So capital investment, long-term investment. So in that process, more, this work, the government spends money, the government will give a tender to a private company. So the private company will get an employment. The private company would say that I want road, I want that, the gravel, so mining activity will take place. I want the cement, so cement industry will benefit. Steel will be required. So you see, this is having a multiplier effect. And when all this takes place, when the roads are being built and all the other economies, like for example, cement grows. So cement industry will need raw materials from somebody else. And when the infra is created, that will be an incentive for the existing private players or from the foreign to come and invest in a country that see the logistics or the infrastructure in this country is excellent. So the government, to stoke the economy, must spend extra. Right, so that is the basic crux of this article over here. Now let me just run you through the article. So the article is saying that there are 8 core sectors. Core sectors are the very important sectors. They are the base, they are like the backbone of the economy, on which the other sectors of the economy depend upon. For example, so you refer to this net, just type 8 core sectors and you will find it. So electricity, steel. Now steel is required for automobile, so we will not call automobile as the core. Steel is the core, because the steel, if more steel is being used, the other sectors of economy are also using it. So it is saying that the core is not doing well, right? The core sector is not doing well, and that is a reflection that the other sectors of the economy will not do well, because the demand for steel, the demand for electricity, refinery products is coming down. Now we have one more thing that you need to know: which all sectors are part of the eight core sectors and what is their relative weightage. So here we have, for example, 28%. The largest component is for the refinery sector. So in our now let's leave that at this point. The economy is not doing well. There are supply chain issues. There is inflation that is very increasing at a good rate. Now let's come back to this capital formation, capital expenditure. So as compared to the previous year, the capital expenditure grew a mere 0.8% in February from a year earlier. That's not much. Capex has risen by 20%. What is 20% of, let's say if the capital expenditure was 20%, so 20% hike of this is what, 24%? Not adequate. Okay, so this is there. Now the government may have thought that things would get normalized at this point of time. We may be able to sell LIC, BPCL, so that will raise capital. When we sell the companies that we have, we will get money. That money could have been used for greater public investment, but since the stock market has been very volatile, and why so? Because of the overall economy not doing well, and because of the the war that is taking place, Ukraine crisis, all of this that has hampered the mood of the stock market. Crude has become very expensive. So the government is not really in a position to do it. The government wants to have whatever the money that it had. The government wants to keep this as a buffer so that it could meet the revenue side of things. Budget has two components, revenue and capital. So like payment of salaries or normal routine day-to-day affairs, the government spends on that. I hope I have not confused you over in this article. Okay, now let's do this quickly. Making groundwater visible. Here are certain facts with reference to your prelims. They will be important. Right, World Water Day was on March 22 and the theme was groundwater making the invisible visible. Then it talks about the significance of groundwater as if we don't know. If we know what groundwater is, that water is not coming, tube well tank is on, the water comes to this thing. Groundwater is needed for irrigation, especially in drier areas where the river water is not there, groundwater is being used. Right, so all of this. Now let me just give you a crux of this article. See, this is the land over here. What is the groundwater basically? So when the rains take place or the river water goes, whatever happens, there is infiltration, there is permeation of water into the soil, and ultimately there are certain pockets where the water is stored, and we call this as the aquifers. Right, so there is water stored over here. Naturally this water is not indefinite. Now at this moment what is happening is we are extracting water. We are extracting water by means of tube wells. We are digging this, we are constructing a tube well and extracting the water. Sounds good, especially in arid areas where water is not there for irrigation, river water is not there, surface water. So we are using this water over here. So far so good, water is there, but this water is not available in huge. Ultimately it will end, but we have been extracting groundwater at a rate that is faster than the rate at which it is recharging. So see, the water we are extracting, water is getting refilled also, but we are extracting it at a much faster rate. Our demand for water is increasing like anything. Plus unsustainable farming practices, for example the cultivation of paddy, rice, water intensive crop in a semi-arid area of Punjab, Haryana. So groundwater depletion is taking place. Now what makes matters worse, by the way, irrigation accounts for 89% of groundwater extraction. Now what makes it worse is water is being extracted, but when the water table comes down, that is, one has to dig deeper to get water. So when the level comes lower, so when it is at 70% of utilization has taken place, beyond this it is considered unsafe. So more and more water is being extracted. Now consider here that towards the soil we may have heavy metals like arsenic, mercury, we may have fluoride, nitrates. So these pollutants will also come up when you're drinking that, using that water. You will also be consuming the contaminated water and it will cause illness. Arsenic is a poison, by the way. So it will cause illness. Right, so in arid areas, you will find the water has more fluoride content, more salty, shora, we call it as shora. So that thing was there. So that is not good when it enters into your body. So this is an unsustainable practice over here. So in this regard, it gives us a reference of the Mihir Shah committee report. Now, Mihir Shah committee report is very, very important. It was, I think, 2016, it mentions here. So I'm finding this confusing. So let's put it this way. Mihir Shah said, his work was to basically review the water management or the governance of water in the country. And he basically said that, see, we have a problematic approach to water management. We are using the surface water. We are focusing on the surface water and groundwater independently. Surface water and groundwater independently. Rather, we should have an integrated approach towards water management. We should have a holistic view of water management. Right. Surface water is there. It is this water itself which is percolating at the end of the day. Right. So integrated approach to water management should be there. Second thing that it focuses upon, and it's mentioned in the article also, that presently our water governance is supply centric. It is supply centric and filled with civil engineers. We are looking at construction of dams, irrigation projects, as to how we can basically supply water. That is the focus of water governance. We haven't really focused on the demand side management. So see, water is less, so use less water. Use less water. If in Punjab there is aridity, there is and nowadays there is higher incidence of cancer also. So focus on less demand of water. How do we do it? By having climate smart agriculture. According to the climatic conditions, according to the water table, have sustainable practices for agriculture. So that needs to be done. So linking cropping patterns and cropping intensity with groundwater available. So that needs to be done. Right. So this has to be done. So it also recommended that there should be a single entity for water management, not that central water commission, then groundwater commission. No, we should have a single entity. We should have a holistic view, and it should not be filled with civil engineers. It should be not just seen as an engineering approach. It should have people who are expert in sociology, because water has a social component also. Water has an component on agriculture. So agriculture management is important. Bulk of the water is being used by the agriculture. Right. So people from different fields should be involved over here. So what I've said, integrated management of water resources, demand side management has to be emphasized upon. Then in our country, water is a community resource. It belongs to everybody. But if somebody digs a tube well, if somebody owns a property and digs a tube well over there, then the rights that water belongs to that person. The rights to this water belongs to this person. And every house is trying to have deeper and deeper tube wells and more powerful machines over here so that they can get the maximum amount of water. So this is unsustainable. This is wrong. So there is a need to evolve a legal framework to look into this issue. Right? We need to have a legal framework on this. Furthermore, there is another issue over here is the electricity. Electricity is basically free in the rural areas, it's not metered. So the pumps keep working because they are not paying for the bill. So the farmers keep running the pump all the time. So because of the subsidy that is giving to electricity, so we can say that the water is also subsidized in this area. So this needs to be regulated, this practice over here. Now let's come to the question. Nearly half of India's population is water stressed. So just quote composite water management index, which says about half of our population, 660 million, is water stressed. Our population is 130 million, 1.3 billion. Okay. So you can explain the issues associated with this. How it will affect the agriculture, how it will affect the food security, how it will affect the livelihood of the people, how it will affect the mere existence of the people, drought proneness, etc. So just focus upon this, then examine the reforms in management and governance of water resources in the country, and do quote Meher Shah committee report. Read more about this Meher Shah and you'll be fine, right? So this has to be done. Am I missing anything? You can also talk about concretization of the urban environment. Look at when you're in the cities, just look everywhere it is cement. So if the cement is there, how will the percolation take place? So the groundwater recharge is not taking place. Then what else can be done for enhancing water security? Rainwater harvesting needs to be done. That too not at the building, but also at the community level. That has to be done. What else? Right. So these are certain practices that needs to be done. If you can think, do add to it. Now, yeah, integrated watershed management has to be done. So in arid areas, in rural areas, what we can do is we can construct ponds where the water, whenever the rain takes place, the water gets collected over here. It gets basically construct a catchment area, or when we dig something, so that the water percolates. So that needs to be done. That is another thing. Integrate watershed development program. That's the scheme of the government, by the way. Now, if you do this, if you address these issues here again, you are also addressing the issue of groundwater management, right? If you do this, groundwater management is also taken care of. So be it water stressed, be it the issues with the groundwater, you should be able to address with this content over here. Now this is the measures associated with the Atal Bhujal Yojana. Bhujal means Bhu, ground, Jal, water. Right, these are the parameters. Just one thing to note over here is that Atal Bhujal Yojana is not for the entire country, but it is only for water stressed areas. So implementation in identified water stressed areas. Right, you can see this. I refer to the Jal Shakti Ministry. So there I got this. Now coming to the NFC technology, basically NFC technology and what is its application, you should prepare a note. And there was a pre-based question also about NFC and what is the range associated with it. I think nowadays every one of us is using the NFCs, right? Tap credit card or the debit card, tap and pay, that is NFC, near field communication. Your metro cards, when you go to the metro and you tap, that is NFC based. Okay. So near field communication is a short range wireless connectivity technology. I think you do it by yourself. I'm exceeding my time limit over here, and just that it is within a few centimeters only, right? You just tap and go. So it cannot be meters. Meter is this much. So that way it was very simple. It was centimeter, it was millimeter, centimeter, meters. So like that a question was asked. Right. I have highlighted the key points over here which you can refer to. IPCC report talks going down to the wire. So first of all, what is this IPCC? IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is a US backed science body. Kya karti hai? What does it do basically? It basically does secondary research. So when people have given all that research on climate change, etc., so it aggregates them. And based on that, it tells what is the issue of climate change, what are the associated issues, or how will it affect the society, people, what needs to be done. All of this based on the research done by others. It doesn't have its research of its own in that sense. It is dependent on secondary research. This is something that you need to keep in mind for your prelims. It's a UN-backed body. Now, its primary task is, one of the goals of restricting the climate change is that we should limit it to the pre-industrial level. So whatever temperature was that at the pre-industrial level, the mean temperature should not exceed beyond 2 degrees Celsius. So overall average, basically, you may say that, okay, fine, the weather is today 50, tomorrow it was 50, in the winters it is at this level. No, we are basically referring to the mean for 30 years, 25 years, that is climate basically. So for that, so 2 degrees Celsius is a very big number. And we have reached the 1.1 degrees Celsius already. And the Paris talks, where we set the agenda after the Kyoto Protocol, it basically tells us as to how the world must do, various world countries should work so that we are able to limit this climate change to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that was the goal being set, because if we go beyond 2 degrees, if we set the target of 2, we may exceed this. So the target was set well short of 2 degrees Celsius at 1.5, but we are already at 1.1 degrees Celsius. So in that regard, what the world countries must do, and naturally India is also one of the highest emitters. Right, with stocks, the negotiations are going on. So developed countries particularly, they are one of the highest emitters of the pollution of the greenhouse gases. Now the developing countries are saying, see, it is you guys which polluted. And if we look at per capita basis, that is how many people are actually polluting. So on per capita basis, the contribution of, if we divide the emissions by the population of India, the number will be very, very small. So on that basis, again, our share is very less, and we should be allowed to emit, so that we are able to industrialize and bring the people out of the trap of poverty. So that is what the government is saying. Or else what you do is, you provide us funding, you provide us capital for the transition cost that is there for moving to renewables, moving to any other means of cleaner technologies. You give us the technology, we'll do it. So Green Climate Fund has been initiated as a result of the Kyoto Protocol, but nothing much has taken place on that front also. Now, when India makes this argument, India basically says that the responsibility towards the issue of climate change is a combined one, but the responsibility towards this is different. Developed countries should share a higher burden because they have developed, and it is basically because of the unsustainable emissions made by them that the entire world is suffering right now. So this concept is known as common but differentiated responsibilities. Right then, so this concludes the session. So thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish. Bye bye, take care and all the best.